How about those Cleveland Browns?
Yes. So we're early today. And I'm sure a lot of you're going to be checking this in later because it will also be available at 1 o'clock as well, so you can watch it then. It just won't be live. We'd like to have a chat room group, so there's a lot going on, so we had to do it early today. And we hopefully won't be doing, we'll be like our regular times for the most part. And tell us, guys, what time you guys like it done to. That's kind of cool too. It would be nice.
Yeah.
If you guys could, email us or throw in the comments, this is when it would be best for me live. That would be great. So just please comment.
The only, and just to let people know, it's like we would ideally like to do it at the same time, but sometimes with our schedules, Russ does a recording on one day. I'm going to be going up to Toronto for every Leaf home game. So certain times in the morning, I'm going to be at the morning skate.
Right.
But, within reason, we're going to try to lock down one single time. But
there's always going to be changes. And look, if people want this show to be sort of plugged in and you get good real-time information, that's the only way it's going to happen because we have to go through other stuff.
And the more you guys help us out on Patreon, the more we can get into being able to devote more solid time to this all the time too, which helps out as well. So help us out.
Peter.
Hey, Peter.
Hey guys.
Peter coming in really early today. We appreciate that. So I've got a little pre-show thing here. I've got a beef with. So I'm a big fan of the EA NHL series, and I finally got mine for the game for the Xbox, right? So I have gotten everyone. I play it online. You can find me at Buzz Eklund if you go on the Xbox Live community. Sometimes I'll play against people in the middle of the night. It's kind of fun. I'll get killed, but we'll talk rumors the whole time, so it's fun. Anyway, but because I used to be good at this, but but compared to children of this day and age who have been who are super robots, I can't come close. So, but anyway. I was really looking forward to this one specifically because they have this thing called Legends that they're doing on it, which is where they have 200 legends, and these were like 200 players from the past, and they have some great ones. I mean, and it's funny because when you look on these players' pages, they have their actual age. Like one guy's like 112 years old, one guy's they have their actual age, and it's and there's 300 legends, there's 200 legends, but I don't know how they were picked. I'm trying to find this out, and obviously this is like a great debatable thing, how you would pick these things. I have a feeling it wasn't based. I have a feeling it was based on money and agreements. Like I have this really good because so
usually is based on for most video games. When you're talking about a Legends game, it's who can we get?
Yeah.
So they got Gretzky. I'm sure they paid Wayne a ton of money to be on it because he's on the cover of the Legends version of this game, and he's got to be. If you have to have Wayne Gretzky, right? You have to have Mario Lemieux. They've got Wayne and Mario. They don't have Gordie Howe. I mean, they have a bunch of old Canadians like Jean Rattel and not Jean Rattel's not Canadian. Sorry,
John Bello.
But
he is Canadian, but not on the Canadians. He was a Ranger guy.
They have Beliveau. They have some interesting, really old players. They have Sid Adams, for example.
Do they have Howie Morenz or George Vezina?
They do have Howie Morenz, I believe they do. I went through it quickly, but they also have Scott Mellenby. And
wow, Mellenby.
Wow.
And
I think of legend. When I think of legend, I think of Scott Mellenby.
Well, but here's the thing:
Scott Young, who played for the
I remember Scott Young for the Blues, right?
Scott Young, right?
The Whalers before that, I think.
Yeah.
It must be the first name.
But let me finish my thought, and then so there's no Bobby Orr. Okay, that's a big one, right?
Oh my God.
So
then why bother playing the game?
There's no Bernie Perrant. Like there's a Bobby Clark. Okay, that's the only flyer, and that's fine. That's fine. And there's no Eric Lindros. Okay, so there's certain players that I think that would absolutely have to be on this list.
We don't have Bobby Orr, but we do have Ron Stackhouse.
We have Rick Vive. They have Rick Vive, so they have for your Leaf fans.
Oh, good old
boy.
All right, but here's the thing. So I wanted to integrate these players into the game so I could play them with current players and see how that would be. That was a fun thing to do, right? And I can do this by creating players, which I've done in the past, which I probably will have to do in the future. Well, I know I'll have to do in the future because all you can do is play against them as a team. Okay, so they don't. These players where I can trade any player. Like I can trade any player from the Swedish Elite League. There's like crazy leagues, college Swedish elite leagues, the USHL. There's players there's all over the place, prospects all over the place, and I can trade them onto any NHL team I want to. but they have like 5 teams they put together of these
5 legend teams,
classic legends teams, and I can only play against them. I can't move these players, and that's a pain in the ass because it's the other thing that they do. Like, so if I want to create,
I was gonna say,
if I wanted to create Eric Lindros, I could go in, or if I wanted to create, even I wanted to create Wayne Gretzky. All right, so I could go and I could take all their things and I could create a player that looks like Wayne Gretzky. There's incredible detail, like in faces and all this stuff. I could create that player down to the helmet and everything like that. But then if I put him on the Edmonton Oilers, I can't give him his number 99 because they have all the retired numbers. They do not allow you to create a player on a team with a retired number, which is like absurd.
So just make him 66.
Right, you can do something like that. But if you're a kid like out there, like I'm like a jerk guy, so this is no big deal. But if you're a kid out there and you want to create, you want to be number 99 because that's your number because you grew up idolizing Wayne Gretzky, you want to put yourself in the game, you can't. And I think that, to me, that's an issue.
There's a lot of things here. Sorry.
Go ahead.
First off, there have been a lot of lawsuits in the last 5 years over likenesses of players and being able to create those players. Like Michael Jordan was at the center of it.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why you can't do what you're saying you can do, because like for Gretzky, it's just because it's retired, but other ones, it's because of that. Because if the player's not in there, you can't make him either.
Well, I can make every player. The only one I can't make are the retired numbers for the team.
No, I know. There's a reason.
No trouble with the Maple Leafs because Maple Leafs hardly retire anybody. So
but if you go to try and make a Bobby Orr, it's probably not going to let you.
It will.
Right. No, unless you put him on the Blackhawks, like
that's not number 4, so I can't make him number 4.
No, all right. Well, that's the thing. So that's how they got around that finally. But I'm saying in the past, they would not have a player like that in the game, and then you'd be able to essentially make him and just not call him Michael Jordan. Well, companies have gotten in trouble for that. So then what you were also saying is I've interviewed companies in the past where they were doing video games and Legends games, and they're all singular contracts. Like every tennis game you ever see, it's all singular contracts because there's no Tennis Players Association or one governing body where you could sign everybody up under an umbrella like the NCAA. Yeah. So that's where that part becomes a problem too. So you kind of, that's why you get a Scott Mellenby mixed in with a Jean Rattel.
Right. I mean, they're fillers basically. And all this like the whole, I'm sure like Bobby Orr, you remember there was a lawsuit against, I don't know if it was against EA or if it was against what company, but Ed O'Bannon, the former UCLA basketball player, he sued because his likeness was being used on a video game. And I honestly, I don't know what happened with that lawsuit, but based on what we're hearing here, I'm assuming he won because each person has to sign off on their likeness being part of that video game. And if they don't get reimbursed for it, then they just eliminate them. But honestly, I mean, what's the point? What's the point of a Legends game if you don't have Bobby Orr and Gordie Howe? Really?
Yeah, there's a lot of angles on this, right? Like,
there are.
There's a whole bunch of things. First off, I think EA probably has a plan to make things a little better. This is the dangle point, right? And they're going to look at feedback. They're going to do some focus groups. They're going to see what the forums say. And then they're going to know, is this worth investing more into? Because we've got a market for it. The second point with this is if you are someone who is an ex-player and you look at what your licensing possibilities are, your endorsements and stuff. So Bobby Orr's got a pretty big deal with Chevrolet, and I think he's got a couple more. What's EA willing to pay him, and does he need it? And does he need it for his legacy? So when you're looking at this, you're looking at your image and you're saying, how does this affect what I already market and stuff? And he may have clauses in his existing marketing deals with Chevrolet that say, your image cannot be used in certain ways. Otherwise, this contract's done or that. He may be hamstrung to it. If you're someone like a Gretzky, you probably carry all the weight. I'm surprised Orr doesn't, but I mean, those top tier guys, depending on their deals that they have now, are probably used in certain ways. The fact that Gretzky's still involved in the NHL actually is probably the one thing why you're going to see him more in things like this. Or really isn't involved, right? So there's a lot of layers here.
Say about that because I've dealt with the Wayne Gretzky group, okay? Because we actually years ago, we had this game. It was a real fun game. I want to bring it back. I thought it was really fun. It was a fantasy game called Beat the Streak, and what it was remember Gretzky's point scoring streak of, I forget how many games it was.
Are you talking about the goal scoring streak?
Well, he had 50 and 39.
Yeah.
So he had a point scoring streak of beyond that. It was like it was some crazy, like 60. I forget what it was. It was. Anyway, it was more than the hits record. It was interesting stuff. So anyway, we had this game called Beat the Streak, and we wanted to call it Beat the Great One. Okay, that was what we wanted to call it because we were like, okay, because with the number that you had to beat, and we set up we kind of called an insurance company, and we got an automobile. You know how you if you want to do a hole-in-one tournament, that kind of thing, we did that kind of thing. You call up, we're like, if someone can do this, and the idea was every night you had to pick a player and if that player got a point, your streak kept going. And so if you could get that over 50 games or whatever the Gretzky number was, then you would win a car. Okay, and so we said that, and it's really hard to do, obviously, because some nights there's only 2 games going. Right? Like some nights you can say, okay, I'm going to pick McDavid, but if McDavid's not playing. McDavid doesn't even get a point every game. So if McDavid's not playing that night, or the Panthers are playing the Coyotes one night, that's the only game going. Then you got to pick somebody who's going to get a point in that game to keep going. It's really hard to do. We set up we made a deal with a company and no one broke it. No, I think the person who got the highest got to 32 games, which is really pretty good. But and we gave them we had a prize for the highest as well.
Yeah.
So when we did this, I wanted to call it Beat the Great One, and so I said, we better contact Gretzky just in case, and we found out all the craziness that goes along with that organization and the fact that the Great One, quote unquote, is a big time patented thing. Like he's got that
trademarked
up and down, and we couldn't use it. So we had to call it Beat the Streak. And because we could use it, but it would cost us $25,000. It was something crazy that for us, this was like a fun game for our readers. Right. I want to do it again. Like I said, I'm trying to get it done this year. So it was fun. And I think that's, that's so you're right. There's a whole bunch of legal issues, but here's how they used to get away with this. And I, what's interesting here now, if I'm doing this game, back then, Bobby Orr, when he played, obviously there were parts of his career, I think he was right in the middle, parts of his career where it was just a number 4 on his back with no name at all. And there were times when it was just when he was 4 on the back, right? But he played in the era before they put nameplates on the back. And if you remember, there were other video games that said, and we will get started here in a second, but there were other video games that said that had all these old players in it, but didn't have the NHL rights, but would just put a guy from a team called Edmonton that was blue and orange and was number 99. You could do that. You didn't name him Gretzky, you just gave him that number 99 on a team called Edmonton without the logo, just Edmonton blue and orange, right? So the NHL owns these owns the teams. So the NHL kind of owns these retired numbers. So to me, that the number shouldn't be the issue as much as the name is, but yet I can create a player and call him Bobby Orr. But I can't give him the number.
You can't give him the number, so that's the catch. But that's the catch.
But that's what the NHL to me, that's the segment the NHL owns. So what I'm confused.
The NHL is probably in agreement with the player, we won't put these two things together.
Oh yeah, it's to their benefit too, because they want to be able to put the team together, the name, the legacy. It ties all in. It's one of the reasons why when you see OJ Simpson out there, he's selling jerseys without numbers and without when he does his things to make whatever money he does, he's autographing facsimiles of what the jerseys are because he doesn't own the rights to the who do you play for? USC and the Bills, right?
And San Francisco.
And San Francisco, he's got to sign a gold jersey or a red
those
jersey.
Teams would never ever give him permission to do it anyhow. So
but he can sign knives.
Yeah. Oh, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, Mike.
All right.
Come on.
He's a slashing running back.
Let's move on.
Oh,
Hey, he played here for the bulk of his career. His name is on the stadium. I have the right to make fun of him.
Everybody does. You're right. All right. So let's move on to the show. This was very hockey related. So I'm going to say that was part of the show anyway, because this whole thing was hockey related. But that was not really a pre-show. It just haven't done the introductions yet. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is Friday, September 21st, 2018.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
I'm a Jets fan. I'm embarrassed too.
I'm Eklund. You're watching Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com, and I've learned something today. The Take a Boost does go bad. You can't drink it after. I cannot drink I made this for myself. I know caffeine in my house, so I'm like.
It went bad the day after it was made.
Anyway,
but continue.
You're watching Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast. Comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in hockey world. Not usually at this time, but at a time sometime during the day. This is really early, so we're gonna do the best we can.
Russ and I were discussing this. Okay. So we need to start with this.
Go ahead.
Now most teams have played at least one, maybe two preseason games. I have watched, I think, besides the two Leaf games, I've watched a couple others. In general, I have to say these games have been horrendous.
Yeah.
And I understand, these teams are sorting through the rosters. They're playing kids.
Yeah.
Who are going to go back to junior, who are going to go back to the AHL, who may go over back to Europe, and we'll probably only see games that are of an NHL level as we get into the second half of the preseason. But I don't remember, Russ, ever preseason games being this disorganized, this bad, this boring in my life.
No, I agree. I've been remarking that to myself and anybody who will listen. I've watched quite a few, like the Flyers have played a bunch of them, right? And it was so obvious that the Flyers had played a bunch of them when they went and played the Rangers, because it was the Rangers' first one, and the Flyers had played 3, I think, at that point.
Yeah.
You can see a massive difference in how the guys were playing. And so I just want to caution people, for everybody that thinks that the youngster or two that they like is going to make the team, don't base it on what you're seeing on these early games. Just because teams are saying, hey, he looks good and he's doing right and they're putting him in the lineup, they're going to say that. But again, taking case in point like the Flyers, right? So everybody likes what Vorobyev has done. However, you have to put into context that Sean Couturier looks like he probably will get into the opening day lineup. They're just not going to play him much in preseason, but he looks like he's progressing nicely. Jordan Wheel has been around a couple of years, and he's really Hextall's favorite, and I think he's played really well for that 3C spot. So really, when you're talking about Vorobyev, now you're talking about a 3C or a 4C, but most likely a 4C spot in the NHL.
Right.
I've spoken to some people who, are pretty plugged into the team, and they kind of think, hey, you know what? And these aren't people that work for the team or anything like that. But they're like, you know what? They could see Vorobyev going back because they want him to get top 6 minutes in Lehigh. Like, that's a good example, because a lot of people have already penciled him in. Hey, he's going to win this job. But if you really look at it, even the New York Rangers, who are supposed to be a building team, there's not a lot of jobs at stake. And that's the other thing that I'm not liking about this preseason. There's not a lot of jobs to win. I've seen so many articles like, well, the 4th line center spot's up for grabs. Well, great. That's fantastic.
You know what I'm not liking about it is the fact that it used to, I might be wrong about this, but it used to be that they actually practiced for a week before they played games. It seems like
it's a shorter practice period.
They jumped right in after 2 days or into actual preseason games. I mean, I know it's a money grab, but it's it's
a 3-day rookie camp, right? Because some of the if you get a college player or two that actually is there, they got to go to college. But most of those guys usually don't show up anyhow. It's a 3-day rookie camp, then a 2-day camp, and they start playing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nuts, I mean, it really is ridiculous that they do that. I mean, I just think that it makes these games worse, because these players, a lot of them have never even, a lot of them are probably meeting each other at the game, they have no idea who these people are, and it's just, there's no real camp. There should be at least a week of solid practices before you get to this.
Now, Eck, you're a goalie. As a goalie, I want to bring that up too, because Carter Hart's look great. If you look great, hey, I never hold it against you. He's still not starting the season, so it doesn't matter. But
about that, as are most Flyers fans. But
if you're a veteran goalie, just like a pitcher when they're in spring training, I'm sure you're working on just a few things each game, and you don't really care about how many goals go in, but you're working on whatever makes you feel like you needed to work on the year before. Because pitchers in spring training might throw 2 pitches, or work on the one that doesn't work. I'm sure goalies are doing this too, because people get crazy. Lundqvist gave up 5 goals. It's come on.
I mean, I used to, but I think really right now is what everybody comes to camp knowing that they have to hit the ground running. So I think people are working for a couple weeks beforehand on that stuff.
Oh yeah. All the Jets were here in Winnipeg skating out of their practice facility for about 2 weeks on off as guys trickled into town and everything and stuff. One of the things I think I'd love to know, and I'd love to sit down with a couple coaches and ask them, when you prepare for training camp, what message are you sending beforehand to come in? What's your expectations? What are you talking about? Are you talking about what's available for jobs? Like, I'd love to know what the pre-camp messages are, what players are getting, what they're told in the first talk as a team from the coaches, the head coach, the assistant coaches, and what people look at. I'd love to understand that process, because I think there's something really interesting in there. And I've only watched Jets games in the preseason, caught a couple other ones, but not a lot of TV in terms of showing preseason games nationally. And one of the things I've noticed is the guys who I expect to be on the bubble are giving it like all hell. Like, they're going all out. Mm-hmm. And you wonder, is this because they know they're there, know just psychologically within themselves that they got to do it, or because there's a bigger message going on? And then the other thing that's, I think, interesting about what we're seeing with these quick games coming around is it's giving coaches sort of a look at the guys they know aren't going to make the team, but they see what's up against their peers in terms of other players who in similar situations. And there's a takeaway from that. You can say, okay, this is where we saw the deficiencies in your game. And if you're the farm team coach, you're going to send that message down. So in a place like Winnipeg, where the proximity is down the hall, you can work with your farm team coach and say, okay, these guys are coming down. This is what they're not doing right in the system here. They need to work on this with you because the system's harmonious, right? You move from one point to the other. Mm-hmm. And I bet you that's a lot of the case with the Leafs. Yes. Anyone who are very close together, where there is a lot of interaction and communication.
Peter, have you seen solid goaltending from veteran goalies? Because I haven't. I've only seen it from the guys who have.
I thought Talbot played okay last night.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. They all are playing okay, but the younger guys, they're the ones that are going all out in net. Yeah. For sure.
Ryan Miller looked not good last night. I was watching that. He did not look good.
Who didn't look good?
Who? Ryan Miller.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
but he can.
I mean, the first preseason game means absolutely what to Ryan Miller. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he can mail it in. What the hell? There's nobody really challenging him for the backup goalie. It's I mean, like in Toronto right now. I mean, Freddie Anderson had a shutout in 2 periods against Ottawa, but it was Ottawa. So you have to factor in that. But in the first game, the Kraft Hockeyville game in Lucan, Garrett Sparks made 22 saves. He really didn't face any real tough shots. He had a couple crossbars. Curtis McElhaney, who's fighting for the backup job, was great, and he only faced like 13 shots. So that battle is going to go down to the final cut of the before the season opener. I just think, like, to your point, the Leafs players were scrimmaging at MasterCard Center, and I would say like 80% of the roster 2 to 3 weeks before the start of camp, and and then rookie tournament, and then the opening weekend of training camp. So they are hitting the ground running, so to speak.
Not live action. Like, you could say they're scrimmaging, but it's not.
Right. It's not top speed. It's like at that rookie showcase, Ross. Yeah. They were going at like 25%, but still they were on the ice and they were sort of getting used to their teammates. Yeah. Where I think is interesting, and just being up there and watching and listening to Babcock as he sort of presses buttons on players. Constantly in training camp, and he's been doing it constantly. Travis Dermott until he hurt his shoulder, and it's not a serious injury, but he's got to earn his way on the team. Kasperi Kapanen and Andreas Janssen, who everybody thinks are locks to make the roster. Well, they got to show me more. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like he's keeping. At least publicly, he's keeping his options open, and he's pressing them to do more, because he doesn't want them to be complacent and say, oh, you got a spot on the roster. He wants them fighting for jobs.
I can tell you, Peter, the message from Hextall, because he gave just a little glimpse into it after one of the preseason games against the Islanders, and he wasn't happy, and he sort of ripped the team that went, that they were maybe a little too soft and everything else. I think what Hextall expects is, if you're a young guy who wasn't on the team last year, play like you belong and play like you're going to be an NHLer even if I'm not going to put you on the team because you're part of this organization and you should be fighting to be on this team. I think that's the message for the guys who don't know if they have a job. But the guys that know that they have a job, they're not playing great hockey. Let's be real. I mean, if they were, you would see like John Tavares getting a hat trick in every one of these games against goalies that, won't even be there in a week.
Right.
Yeah.
No, you're right. You're right.
Now, the big news since Wednesday, since our last webcast, was the incident regarding Max Domi and Aaron Ekblad in Montreal during a preseason game, and Domi being suspended for, I believe, it was the balance of the preseason.
It's the rest of the preseason.
What an absolute friggin' joke!
Yeah.
Because I don't believe he loses any money.
Doesn't.
And he does and he's not playing in games that are meaningful at all. The only thing is now supposedly they were going to use him at center. He has no opportunity to sort of get used to the position that they want him to play. So he's going to go in.
What they're saying, I mean, and there is some truth to this. I get this. Is the fact that he's a new player. They wanted to work him with new line mates. And that there's something to that.
Yeah,
that does hurt them. That does affect them. But at the end of the day, the NHL needed to. I think the NHL should have allowed him to play in the preseason. This was my theory. Play in the preseason, and suspend him for 2 games of the regular season, like that. Because
I would be better with that.
Well, doesn't that make more sense? I mean,
it's ironic, Ek, because with his dad, during the famous Scott Niedermayer incident of more than a few years ago. When he knocked Niedermayer out of the playoffs, he got suspended for the remainder of the playoffs, and I think it was like 8 games at the beginning of the regular season. These suspensions, if they want to be punitive and they want to stop players from doing stupid crap, they shouldn't suspend him for preseason games. They should suspend him for regular season games.
That's what I think too, and let him play in the preseason. Let him play in the preseason because preseason is supposed to be about when guys get hurt, when everybody. I mean, unless you do something so vile. I mean, this is not. This was terrible, but it wasn't like, Well,
it was terrible from this standpoint. Here's the thing. We definitely see more fights in the preseason. Actually, most preseason games that I have viewed have had at least one fight, where an NHL game, you're seeing one fight every 20 games now, right? It doesn't happen that often. But here's the thing, and that's fine. They feel like that, that's what these guys have to do to make the team, whatever. I don't care. You sell them tickets. That doesn't bother me. What bothers me is when you're starting to see headlines like, does Aaron Ekblad have to defend himself? I mean, go look it up. Aaron Ekblad can fight. Aaron Ekblad didn't think this was going to be a fight, for one thing, based on the way Domi did it. And that's what makes this so bad. Those other fights that we're seeing in preseason are pretty much the range fights. The guys are going up to each other. They know they're going to fight. Ekblad didn't want any part of a fight, and the guy sucker punches him.
Yeah.
And knowing the history, that's what's really bad here. And that's where I lost some respect for Domi, because I get it. He's on a new team and he plays with an edge, but so does Ekblad. But this was just poor sportsmanship too.
Well, it was funny. And I can't remember who, first of all, the commentary from players who are ex-fighters / goons basically saying that Ekblad not deserved it, but because that's not, they didn't say that, but they said he should have defended himself, and by not defending himself, he's sort of culpable in the situation. I don't buy that, because if you don't want to fight, you don't want to fight anymore. That's that's accepted.
So and which part of the code are they deciding to follow this week?
Right.
Yeah. Like this code, this unwritten code that is this meandering, like sort of organic thing that you can pick and choose when you want to apply it, when you don't.
Yeah.
You know what? If any goon or fighter or guy wants a code, go crack a safe or something. I mean, this is getting ridiculous. I mean, go join a hackathon somewhere. The whole logic behind this idea of, well, Ekblad should have known or whatever.
Yeah.
Domi is following in the footsteps of his dirtbag father. And he was, as time went on, Ty Domi became a bigger joke than he was when he first came into the league. Well, and Russ, you'll remember this, because it went so far when Domi was he was a Leaf, and who was the big Ranger tough guy in the 90s, early 90s.
Okay, so before Domi was on the Rangers, Joey Kocur.
It was Kocur or someone else, and it was the New York Post. did
Hospital,
like a boxing promo between Domi, or maybe Domi was the Ranger.
No, it was Domi and Probert. It was when Domi
and Probert. I was at the game where they fought,
and they did it. And before the fight, like they even did this. Domi buys into all this stuff. There's no way that this hasn't rubbed off on his moron kid. And you know what? Good for Phoenix and getting rid of him and getting that headache out of there. This stuff's dumb.
I was at that game. Hold on, Mike. I was at that game where Domi did fight Probert 3 times, right? Yeah. And I wasn't against it, but knowing what I know now, knowing what's happened to players, I wouldn't be for it now if I could go back in time.
I totally agree with you, Russ. Back then, I was wildly entertained by it. But
it's not fair on Max Domi. Stop, please. Max Domi is not this kind of this is out of character.
Not, but he is now.
Yeah, but he is now. And you can't dispel the fact that the kid is playing in Montreal, first home game, and he's fired up. Okay, so he's a fired up kid. He's played in Arizona, and now he's playing in Montreal.
Well, and that was the point I was going to make, because a lot of people, when the incident first happened, they were saying this is just a repeat of what his dad did to Ulf Samuelsson. It was a sucker punch, but I think almost everybody in the league probably would have patted Domi on the back for sucker punching that jerk. But the problem is this is more, and somebody made this comparison, and I think it's pretty apt. This is basically the modern version of the David Clarkson thing with John Scott. Clarkson came into Toronto. He gets the big contract. He wants to prove himself to his new teammates. Domi is going to be, maybe the #1 center. They basically said, okay, we're going to put him up the middle. He wants to prove, okay, I'm going to be a leader on this team. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And he does something absolutely stupid. Now, I know, I don't know him personally. I do know people who know him, and Peter, they say he's a good kid, and he's not his dad, and he's not that type of player, but
we saw something different.
We saw something different. So here's the thing with the reputation. It takes years to build it and moments to destroy it. Max Domi did something that has whittled down his reputation. He's damaged it. Now he's young. He's got a long career to build it back up. This is his moment. This is the point that he says, which way am I going to go? Yeah. Am I going to be this kind of guy, or am I going to be this kind of guy? Now we're going to find out the character of Max Domi.
And here's the difference between Max and Ty Domi. Ty Domi would turtle up in that situation and not throw a punch and just skate away. Max Domi actually get back. I mean, believe me, I was a Flyers fan as a kid, and we hated Ty Domi. And the big thing we hated about Ty Domi the most was he would start something and leave. He wouldn't fight.
Oh my God, please. That's the one thing he did do.
Actually, he didn't. I'm telling you.
He wanted to fight. It wasn't like he always turtled. That's not true.
He didn't always.
Strategic turtling.
But he turtled at least half the time, and it was really.
Would you want to fight Donald Brashear?
Yeah, but you start something.
Oh.
See, the issue is you start something. It's like not. You don't have to.
I was at the game, Mike, when Brashear dyed his sideburns blue because they were playing the Leafs to taunt Domi. I mean,
but anyway.
Here's the thing, though. At the end of the day, I'm seeing comments like, well, Ekblad's a chicken and all these things. And I got to tell you something. This is the kind of thing now and this is what Max Domi was banking on. He was banking on doing something like this in his head. I'm just trying to get in his head. Yeah. He's in the game. It's competitive. He's going to take on the biggest guy because he wants this to be his team. Well, guess what? Now you've just sort of put like a stain on the Montreal Canadiens by doing that.
And we have to realize that this isn't the mid '70s where the Broad Street Bullies would go after Boreas Salming and they would call him a chicken Swede because he wouldn't fight. And the only avenue that Boreas Salming had to defend himself was to become basically a viper in terms of using his stick. That was the only way he could defend himself. Now there's not. I mean, unfortunately, and I'm a pro fighting guy, but fighting is gone in this league. And if somebody's trying to antagonize another player to fight, it's almost acceptable now to sort of turn tail and run. So I know
it is. And look, I used to love a good knuckle chucking blast. Like I mean, and we all did. But no, as Russ said, knowing what I know now, I don't want it anymore. Now, that being said,
I grew up in Philadelphia, but I think it should happen. I think it should be banned from hockey. Okay, so I've said that many times.
That being
they'll never do it.
They'll never do it, but I think someone could get killed. I've said this on discussion before.
If you're sincere about the idea of trying to change that aspect of the game, you have to do things to counterbalance why it exists. And that's where the league keeps falling down.
Yeah.
And it comes to the officials. You got to call everything. You got to call a guy licks your ear or pulls a Brad Marchand or whatever. Boom. Unsportsmanlike, 2 minutes for sniffing the guy. Like, you got to do everything. And the problem is they know fans don't want to put up with that through the learning curve.
Right.
And that's the problem. It's going to change the way the game's played, and it's going to become power play after power play after power play until players get the message. And really, that's what they should be doing in preseason, is tell everyone this is what's changing. You've got 5 games to figure it out. Right. And there's your warning. And then coaches know, boom, guy's not doing it. You sit the idiot down.
I have an interesting little anecdote before we go into the team previews, because it's something that you've talked about in terms of the dynamic between Mike Babcock and Austin Matthews. I was up in Toronto yesterday, and they're experimenting with their power play, and 40% of their power play is playing. That was second in the league last year, is playing elsewhere. Bozak is in St. Louis, and Van Riemsdyk is in Philadelphia. And obviously, John Tavares is going to fill in on that first power play, or at least take one of those spots. The other spot, according to Babcock and according to Austin Matthews, is going to be Austin Matthews. That is loading up their number one power play with Tavares, Matthews, Marner, Morgan Riley, and Nazem Kadri. They're three centers. Babcock was sort of like, well, let's see if it works. And I'm telling you right now, I think that he's skeptical about putting all of his eggs in one basket. Teams have to have a second power play they can play at least 35 to 40 seconds. And if they put out that group as a first power play, more than likely they're going to stay out for the majority of the power play or until they score. But if it doesn't work, they really have no second power play to work with. So I have a weird feeling that was the dynamic between Matthews and Babcock in terms of that little tete-a-tete at the end of the year. And I don't know whether Matthews is going to stay on that first power play. It's an experiment that they're going to try, but I think it may not last too long.
Something else I want to bring up, because we always bring up these guys that aren't signed yet, and the Nylander one, look, way too much coverage on that. But I'm going to bring up the Miles Wood one again, only because Devils fans are turning on him. Like, this is not a Devils fan thing to do. Like, Devils, they like their guys. They like their blue-collar guys. They like them to play hard. There's a certain way.
Fan base that grew up with Lou Lamoriello, right? So remember that. This is Lou Lamoriello would not allow this to happen.
No, so this is backfiring.
He also wouldn't get in this situation. So it's a little bit unfair for the fans, because the fans, Lou would not allow this to happen, but Lou would definitely have cut this off at the pass. So it's like there's a different kind of negotiation, a different way of negotiating for Shiro. So this is not that.
But
that's
do you feel like it's backfiring on the
it is, and it's a shame. I actually think it's kind of a shame. I think that
it's a shame. He's a good player, but I mean,
yeah.
Well, two quick things here regarding Nylander. Elliot Friedman yesterday was talking about the prospect of Nylander getting signed, and he says that the Leafs are preparing to basically go into the regular season without him, because they're not going to capitulate to a demand that he's asking for over $8 million or even over $7 million. They're either going to get him on the amount that they want, or it's going to be a bridge deal. The other one, and you've talked about Columbus and their situation. Yeah. Friedman was reporting that he thinks, and this makes perfect sense with Lou Lamoriello and his penchant for going after big goaltenders, that if Bobrovsky hits free agency next July, that the Islanders will open their coffers for Bobrovsky.
Definitely. There's no question about that. Lou loves.
Well, I don't know if they'll spend $9 million on a goalie, Mike.
Well, no, not 9, but maybe they top what he's making right now, which
depends on the season Bobrovsky has, right? Because it's
right. He's paying, but he's already making 7.5, right?
Right, 7-8 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I told you wherever he's gonna go, Russ, he's gonna make more than Lundqvist.
I don't know about that. I don't think that's a guarantee.
As a free agent?
As a free agent, I don't think that's a guarantee.
It depends on the season. It really does. It depends on how he does in the playoffs. It depends on a lot of things.
Can you see like, say UC Saros does not work out in Nashville, Peter? Can you see Nashville and the Islanders getting into a bidding war over Bobrovsky? Because I sure as hell can.
Yeah, I think a lot of things could happen that way. And it's, Nashville's got to do something. They've come so close. I think last year is the disappointment, and I think the expectations there are very high given the team. And if something doesn't work that way in Nashville, and they can't re-sign Rene, at what he's going to want to make.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. So of course they should be going after Bobrovsky, but I don't, given the way Poyle's managed the cap, they probably can because they're in such good shape that way. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're Bobrovsky, that's
the Islanders. Here's the thing: if you want bad optics, sign Bobrovsky to a long-term deal for like $9-10 million, and then watch Islander fans talk about how you're still paying Rick DiPietro if Bobrovsky isn't doing well, because that's what will happen.
Yeah, but they're paying him off the books because it was a compliance buyout.
Whatever, but they're still paying him. That's the point.
Sure.
Let's talk about the Florida Panthers. I appreciate the conversation, but we do have to get to some of our teams.
Oh, that's fine.
Even though we probably will only get to the Florida Panthers today, which is fine.
No, we can get them.
LA, but everyone in LA is asleep. But anyway, we'll try this.
We can get them both. We can try to get them both. All right, the Florida Panthers. We got two. We're doing Florida and LA today. And as I've been trying to do, I've been trying to find the most interesting, and I have the most interesting stat for the Florida Panthers, which will blow your mind. That's the teaser for later. All right, so here we go. The Florida Panthers last year finished in 4th place. We all remember they had a hell of a run at the end of the year. They were almost unbeatable for a while there. They were one of the best teams in the last month and a half of the season. They streaked and they streaked. They just missed the playoffs. They were better than teams that made the playoffs. That's the way it works in the NHL sometimes. They were better than a couple teams. They were really good at the end of the year. They started to get it together. This is a team that, had a really good year a couple years ago, went to the playoffs, then had an off year because of all kinds of craziness that went on with firing of Dale Talon or moving of Dale Talon to a different position or whatever. Dale Talon takes over again, and they immediately come back by the end of last year. Some weird stats for them. First of all, age-wise, this is the 21st oldest team in the NHL. So this is not, people think of the Florida Panthers as like a young and up and coming team. They are in terms of some of the players, but they also have they also have a sense of, Alexander Barkov's a great 23-year-old player, but they have a lot of players that are not young. And they are the oldest goalie tandem in the NHL. Okay. There's no two ways about that. And that's because you have, a 30, age-wise, Robert Luongo's 39 and a half. He'll be 40 in a couple of days. And then Reimer's 30 and a half. So you've got two goalies that makes them the old 35, basically the oldest goalie tandem in the NHL. And that is, of course, where everything we talk about Florida comes down to. But before we do that, a couple quick stats. Their goals per game, they were 14th in the NHL, so right in the middle. Goals against, 18th. Power play, 21st. Penalty killing, 16th. So they're pretty much in the middle of a lot of categories. But they have one category that they were really good at, and you find in all these situations, there's always one that they're really good at, one that they're really bad at. One that they were really good at, they were the 6th best team in the NHL in save percentage, which is really a 91.4% save percentage between their goalies, which is high, which is really good, and a little bit surprising. Well,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we're getting an echo again.
Okay, I'm not hearing it. Shoot, you guys are here.
I don't have it. Maybe
okay. No, it's gone now. It's intermittent. I mean, honestly, Russ and I were just sort of going back and forth with one of our listeners on Twitter. If you want the Cliff Notes version of the Florida Panthers and whether they're going to be successful or not this year, it comes down to one thing. If Roberto Luongo plays 55 to 60 games, they will make the playoffs. If he gets hurt and you have to rely on James Reimer or Michael Hutchinson, they're not making the playoffs.
And they know that. They know that. Talk to people in the organization who know that exact fact.
Yeah, they're very good. They're I'd say one of the top 5 teams in the league in terms of center depth. They're really good up the middle. They've improved the scoring on the wings with the acquisition of Hoffman. I'm not sure if Owen Tippett's going to make the team, but I think they're better in terms of their wingers than they were at the beginning of last year. And I like the top end of their defense, but it all comes down to Luongo. If Luongo can play at least, I'd say, more than half of the season and can stay relatively healthy, they have a chance. But if you have to go to Reimer, who has never proven that he can be a consistent number one, I mean, Peter, you know more about Hutchinson than I do. Can he step in the gap and play 20, 25 games?
I think he can. The problem is what Michael Hutchinson are you getting? And I think that's the bigger question is, are you getting the guy who dominated in the AHL, or are you getting the guy who had some NHL success last season when called upon, but didn't get a ton of games? And, what's there? I think there's still some questions. Can you get 25 games? You could. We just don't know what he is right now. And that's sort of the challenge there. I think Michael Hutchinson could be a very good backup goalie. I don't know if he has the mental fortitude to be a starter now. I think that ship's maybe sailed in terms of how he's viewed, but doesn't mean it's permanent. But you should be able to get 20 games from him, but you just don't know what kind of 20 games you're going to get.
But he's an insurance policy against Reimer. Right. And again, I don't put all of this whole season on Luongo in the sense that, hey, if Luongo misses 20 games in the middle of the season, they could still make the playoffs. If he's there at the end, they could definitely still make it playoffs. He has to be there the last month. So it's about managing him. They're going to add Henrik Borgstrom, which does add to the center depth that Mike is talking about, which is a tremendous add. And that means, they'll adjust their lineup a little bit, and their lineup will be scary. This isn't just a team that could make the playoffs. This is a team that could go far in the playoffs if Luongo is playing. And that's the big thing about this is it's not just, hey, they're going to just sort of make it at the end. If Luongo's healthy all season, this team could be better than the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
Imagine, Russ, the fact that they could put Borgstrom as a third-line center, have Trocheck and Barkov take the tough matchups, and him playing against other teams' third-liners. And, he's a great talent. So, I mean,
their six defensemen are excellent, and they have a great mix. I mean, when they re-signed Petrovic, I'm a big fan of Petrovic because he's hard to play against.
Right.
He's nasty, and so, but they have a really great mix on defense and actually they do something that Eck likes, and they sort of mix up the players on the pairings and don't put light guys together. And that really does make them a good group. Look, is Keith Yandel good defensively? No, but he has Aaron Ekblad. So that makes that a hell of a pairing if that's what they go with.
Yeah, and I mean their big key this year is health, not only with the goaltender, but Huberdeau has had a history of injury problems. They need their key guys to stay healthy. If they do, then I think they're a wild card team. I don't think that they're going to get into the top three unless one of those top three really falter and something happens that affects them. But I think they're a playoff team if Luongo stays healthy.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, so here's some crazy stats of these teams. First of all, a couple other things that we have here. They are. I like to talk about how many players they have on the entry level contracts because that's a big thing. I'm going to put Borgstrom. I'm putting Borgstrom into the lineup here for the even though they don't have him on there, and I'm taking out Derek McKenzie for the heck of it, according to roster resource, right? So, and putting him in as their fourth as a fourth line. I don't know if he's going to be the fourth line center or whatever, but I'm just taking him out for now.
He could be. Yeah.
So with Borgstrom in there, they've got only 3 guys on entry-level contracts, which is low. Like we said, usually teams need about 5 to 7 in there somewhere, 5 to 6 of their 20. 5 is great, actually. 3 is low. Let's just say that. Let's just say 5 is what they would like. What they did in the offseason, of course, they made one really big move, and that was getting Mike Hoffman, which was a huge move. It really gives them some serious top 6. It gives them a top 6 that is very, very good, and really just puts them in a spot where their top 6 is as good as as almost anyone, and that's going to make them really dangerous. But the interesting stat about them, and this is like, so I've been doing this where are these guys drafted and where are they from thing, which I think is kind of fun.
Yeah.
This team, has something that I have not seen yet, and that is this. They have 8 first-round draft picks in their other 20, so that's good, and that's not uncommon. But then they have 9 players, and this is the first team I've had. Usually this is like 2 or 3. They have 9 players in their top 20 that are 4th round or higher draft picks. So that's almost half of their team, which is really bizarre because that this they have like they only have 1 second round pick, 2 third round picks, right? So this is like a team that has built, and this is the sign of a Dale Talent team usually. I mean, Dale Talent likes to find people, that are all over the map, and he doesn't care where you were drafted, doesn't care where you're from. So I think it's interesting that they have. I mean, so far that's the most that I've done of any of the previews I've done.
I mean, it's more on Scott Luce because Scott Luce was a really good draft guy. Also, though, if you look at the Sharks, most years that's how the Sharks are built too.
Yeah, they have a good, and they homegrown wise they have 11 of their 20. So that's pretty good, and their defense is almost completely homegrown.
Nice that they have fans to go out and see them, but that's another story.
Yeah. Homegrown just means that they've been in their system and nowhere else. Keith Yandel obviously, but beyond Keith Yandel there and Michael and Mark,
Michael Matheson,
Mike Matheson was drafted by them, but
Pisnick was the first round pick of the Sabres.
He's the first round pick of the Sabres. Those 2 guys, but the other 4 are all within their franchise. And where are they from? We've been playing this game. More Canadians or more Americans? So what do we think on this one? More Canadians or more Americans on Florida?
Canadians.
Canadians.
What do you think, Peter?
Sorry, say that again.
More Canadians or more Americans on Florida?
Oh, Americans.
Americans. All right.
Yeah.
Americans have been dominating a lot, except with the exception of Edmonton, which has none of them. We found out yesterday. But no, this team has 13 Canadians and only 4 Americans. This is a Canadian team. And through and through, which is, I'm tracking something that's kind of bizarre, and I'm going to do a blog about this. The further south you get, it seems like in America, the more Canadians you get, and the further north you get in Canada, the more Americans you get. I don't know why this is.
I don't know if it's that. I don't think it's design.
There's nothing to it. I mean, believe me,
incongruous. It doesn't really matter.
Remember, 10 years ago, you would have had more.
It is just interesting that it shows that Canadians. Yeah.
10 years ago, there were more Americans on the Canadians than actual Canadian players.
And there's more Americans on the Canadian teams, I think, than Canadian players right now. I have to go through that exactly, but it's close. It's really close. And there are some teams that I'm finding that to be the case. Like, of course, in Edmonton, we found out, that there are no Americans. So that's an outlier for sure. So that's Florida.
Okay. We can do LA. We've got a few minutes.
LA is we're gonna get LA in here before we get out of here. So the LA Kings, they lost 2 games yesterday. I love the split.
Okay, fire everybody then.
The split schedule. I know they lost twice yesterday. Just let you know.
Although Jeff Carter did well, so that's good.
All right, the Kings. Interesting numbers about the Kings. All right, this is a team, of course, that everybody is saying, they're too slow. They're too slow. They're too slow. They've gotten a little bit faster. Unlike my internet connection, which is taking forever here. All right, so here we go. The most age-wise, the 20-man roster, the LA Kings. Where are they in the scale? Do you think, guys?
I think they're number 1 in terms of old.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, they're top 5.
They are number 2 in terms of old.
Okay,
but they are old. They're definitely old. They are number 1 in terms of age as far as forwards go. Their average forwards are 28.4 years old, which is really old for NHL forwards. I mean, they only have 2 guys under 25 in their top 12. That's kind of like that's really, really old. All right, the Kings finished in 4th last year in their division. Their goals per game 17th. So they didn't score a lot of goals. They're right in the middle. Power play was 17th as well. Their save percentage was 3rd. So there's another team that had a really good save percentage. It speaks highly of the goalie, which also speaks highly, of course, of the fact that they won the award, the Jennings Award. They were the best goals against average team in the NHL, right? They at 2.48, which came about from a large extent by the fact that they were the best penalty killing team in the NHL. They killed off 85% of their penalties. That's amazing. That's an amazing number. I mean, that's just baffling and really, really amazing. Go ahead.
I'll get in the echo again. Try.
Okay. I'll give you the other quick stats that are kind of interesting about them, and then we can move on to everybody's thoughts. Okay. So, the first round draft picks. How many? Let's throw a prediction. First round draft picks of this team.
7.
7. What do you think, Peter?
How many first round picks?
How many first round picks, Mike? What do you think?
5.
5. Mike?
8.
How about 12?
Wow.
12 of their 20 were drafted in the first round. That makes them by far and then 2 in the second, 2 in the third, which means that they only have 6 players of their top 20 that were fourth round or higher, which is really means that this is a highly well drafted team. These are
not shocking. I mean,
yeah,
not shocking, but also just that they've done pretty well with their draft picks, and they're now where are they from? The Kings are I'll just give it to you since we're running out of time, but they're half and half. They're 8 Canadian, 8 American, 2 Swedish, 1 Russian, and of course 1 crazy Slovak. Slovenian. Sorry, Slovenian.
I look at this team, and you can't deny the gravitas that a guy like Kopitar and Doughty and Quick have, and we know that Jeff Carter is a really good scorer, and Dustin Brown was a reclamation project last year and really came back, and they added Kovalchuk. But the thing is that they are still slow, and this league is getting faster and faster. And the concern, I think this is the Chicago Blackhawks 2 years in 2 years. They have a window. I don't know if I can consider them at the top of the Western Conference. I think that they could make the playoffs, and if they do make the playoffs, they could make it miserable for a top team to play against because they have so much experience. But I don't know how much longer they can go with the players, with this current group, before they're just too slow or too old to compete. So I think that they're a wild card team at best, and maybe they win a round if everything goes right, but they're starting to crumble. That's where I think they are.
Okay, yeah, but they're going to have a great power play with Kovalchuk. There's no question about it. Toffoli needs to have a better bounce back year. He wasn't great last year. Adrian Kempe had 16 goals and 37 points. He could do a little more. So that could help their bottom 6 scoring, which I followed. Like, he was one of the best stories in the league last year, just making the team. Gabe Velarde's a problem because I don't think he's going to make the team. He's been out. He hasn't even played. He has a back injury.
Right.
And he's out since July. So, and he was week to week then. So we're not going to see Gabe Velarde this year. But still, this is a good team. But again, this is a team that will probably be like 7th or 8th in the playoffs. They'll get in there. They'll play a lesser team. And if they're sort of healthy, they'll be dangerous.
Yep, they're right. And homegrown, they have 14 of their 20 have come up only through the Kings organization, which is really impressive. That's a high number. Actually 15. Sorry, 15. I missed one. 15 of 20.
I really don't think Kovalchuk's getting more than 25 goals, 55 points. I don't.
Yeah, but one thing you could see though, I mean, if everything that Russ said is correct in terms of where they could be, if they fall behind, if they don't live up to that expectation, if they run into injuries, I'm not saying that they're going to sell off, but that you could see a strategic trade-off of a guy like a Muzzin or a guy like a Martinez, while they still have value, while they, with the high price that you can get for a defenseman. If it doesn't work out, there might be the opting towards sort of a reset and trying to get more speed into the lineup and get a little younger. That's something that Chicago didn't do, and something that they might do if things don't work out this year.
The thing about them is they at least – this is where they do resemble Chicago from years ago. They could ride Muzzin, Doughty, Martinez, and Phaneuf for the most part, most games.
Correct.
And that will get them a long way in this league.
Yeah. I mean, they have a lot of players signed for this year and next year, and after that, it falls off. They really hardly have any players signed beyond 2020. I mean, they have the big guys signed, but what I like about the team, we'll get into predictions for sure later with them, but what I really do like about them is the fact that, I'm sorry, this is what I don't like about them, actually, because last year they were, like we talked about, the best defensive team in the NHL, and they had crazy good years out of some of their stars. Kopitar and Brown had incredible years.
Yeah,
and they still struggle. That to me is that's an issue. Like if you you're telling before the season that you're going to get that kind of year out of Brown and Kopitar, and you're going to win the Jennings, you think you're easily in the playoffs. It's not even close. I mean, but yet they still struggle, right? So that's to me is a bad sign. It shows that they really have a huge problem in their bottom 6 forwards, you know, and they need Jeff Carter. Of course, they need to get more out of him. Kovalchuk, we'll see. I mean, that's like a big we'll see type thing, because I didn't think Kovalchuk looked all that great.
Hold on, I've got a breaking story here.
Go ahead.
This was posted last night, not by Kevin, but on USA Today, that because the Kings are looking for an emergency backup goalie, they're willing to give Chrissy Teigen a tryout. They said it via Twitter.
Well, and it's funny. Well, just two things. One, the 2-year window makes a lot of sense when you look at the construct of Kovalchuk's deal.
Yeah,
he signed the exact same deal that Patrick Marleau signed in Toronto, 6.25 for 3 years. 14.5 of that 18.75 million is in the first 2 years. So if they decide they're gonna go away from, they're gonna go for a rebuild and trade him off or something of that nature, it makes sense they front loaded that deal. Plus a lot of their other players, the deals go off in after the next couple of years. So I think that's it. I think they're gonna ride the veteran guys like Quick, like Kopitar, like the defense, and see how far they get. But then after that, there's gonna be a sort of a come to Jesus moment, like is currently going on with the Blackhawks. And Russ, the funny thing is that we were talking about Corey Crawford. The talk out of Chicago right now is that Corey Crawford, I don't think he's even taken to the ice yet.
No, he is on the ice, but he hasn't been skating with the team yet.
Right, that's what it. I mean, like in terms of practices.
Crawford's situation is very cloaked in mystery. I've talked to a lot of people out there about it. It's really interesting.
This is a reason the Blackhawks decided, all right, we're not going to keep saying upper body anymore, because they knew people wanted some answers for Corey Crawford. Yeah. So at least they pulled back the curtain a little bit on that, and I give them some credit for that.
Yeah, but I mean, they're disaster backup in terms of if he can't go. I mean, you have Cam Ward as your number one, and then it's good old Anton Forsberg as your number two. They might be looking out for goaltending before the beginning of the season if they think Crawford's going to be out for extended.
Yeah, I mean, this is another place where Steve Mason could go, right? I mean, Steve Mason, who's still sitting out there and waiting,
or Michael Neuvirth,
or I'll give you one that I think that's a possibility: a Chicago area native named Garrett Sparks.
Possible. Yeah, I could actually be going out there. Last thing on the Kings before we get out of here, a fascinating fact to me that I thought was hilarious. They have a 100-year-old first line. First team I've ever seen that has this, but between Kovalchuk, Kopitar, and Dustin Brown, their age works out to 100.4 years.
No, but again, I go back to the Tampa Bay team when Barry Melrose was coach, and they had a couple of 40-year-olds on a line with Mark Recchi and Doug Gilmour.
I was gonna say the last one I could think of was the famous line with the Hartford Whalers. Remember, it was Keon, Bobby Hull, and Gordie Howe.
Yeah, well, Gordie Howe kind of skews everything in that situation. But yes, definitely. I mean, here you have 35.4, 31.1, 33.9. Kopitar is the young gun on that line. So there you have it, right? Guys, fun show, early morning show. Thanks everybody for listening. I'm going to now go do my blog, which I usually reverse. So look for a blog in the 11 o'clock hour. I'm going to do some more previews. I also have an interesting rumor I'm going to write about too, that I will share. We'll talk about more tomorrow on the show. Remember that
Monday.
Sorry, Monday. Yes, because tomorrow is the weekend. Thank God. Remember that the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you then.